So moving on to the third secret.
The third one. Well, we've done passion. That was number one. We've just done networking. That was number two. And the third one, I think, is probably the biggest bugbear I come up against when I coach people to get jobs and to pass interviews, and it's P for practice. The reason for practice is it never ceases to amaze me how anybody, a graduate, a middle manager, a senior manager, can go for a job and expect people to pay them maybe £30,000. They're going to be with the company a couple of years, so you're looking at £60,000 plus a laptop plus costs. So basically you're asking your employer, I'd like you to give me £100,000 please over the next 2 or 3 years, and I've done no practice for this interview or whatsoever. And when you put the numbers to it, it brings it home to people that you are asking for money. So practice is really what makes perfect.
And as you mentioned in the book, it's not a question of knowing what to do. It's actually doing what you know. And it's no good reading the book. It's about then, okay, I'm going to do the exercises. I'm going to go out and network. I'm going to speak to people. It's then putting it into practice, as you say.
Very much. I mean, the book Job Hunting 3.0 has been written from practical, real-life teaching and coaching. It's based on working with graduate-type people and middle manager-type people. And I've seen time and again, the bit that makes the difference at the end of the day is that the successful people practice, and they can be scared, they can be nervous, they can be frightened, but they still practice. Because you can say to your mate, I'm a bit nervous about networking, but I'm going to do it. Can you come and hold my hand, sort of thing. And if you're going to go for a job interview and ask someone to basically, you're selling yourself in return for tens of thousands of pounds, you need to know your stories. You need to have your stories in the muscle. So that means that you need to know them spontaneously. And for example, I've had people who've not known their CV. And you say, so James, you went to X or Y university, and James at interview says, oh yeah, did I? Oh yeah, can I just have a look at my CV? I haven't read it recently, and I promise you that's happened. And I flipped it round and said, shall I go out and come back again and give you 10 minutes to practice? And the candidate of course knows the interview is slipping away from them at that time. And yet they'll have polished their shoes, maybe they'll have bought a new shirt, they'll have had their hair styled, and they don't know what they did in life. So practice really is about sitting down, making your mistakes at home, getting a friend to bounce questions off you, and to work at it until you can pull the answers out of your head. Because when you're under stress, it's very easy to forget stuff, and practice is what carries you over the line.
From a practical point of view then, what exercises would you recommend for job seekers who are going through the graduate application process for companies?
I think the first thing is actually to do stuff. It's very tempting for people to wait until they see their dream job and then apply for it. The trouble is you need to cut your teeth on all the other jobs that you weren't so fussed about. So the first thing I would say is always have a target of maybe 5 good applications every week. Of those, 4 can be things you're perhaps not so fussed about, but that will give you a chance to practice writing answers and thinking about yourself. The other thing is you need a great CV, and you need to be able to talk about that CV. So you can print off a CV, give it to your housemate or your parent or your girlfriend or whomever, and say, can you ask me questions about that? So I get confident talking about myself and knowing my stories. And then the third thing is actually to practice the interview. Practice shaking hands, practice making eye contact with people. And whilst that might sound a bit of an easy tip, it's amazing how many chaps shake like they're shaking a wet lettuce. It's amazing how many times they don't make eye contact. Or if I say something like, James, tell me about the time when you've handled a really difficult customer. You're coming for a job in the service industry, and you say, oh gosh, let me think for a minute. Whereas the answer is, thank you for the question. And interestingly, I had a difficult customer 3 weeks ago when ... You've got the answer already in your head, you see.
You mentioned there having supporters, and that's one of the things mentioned in the book that I wish I'd had when I was going through the process, was having people who are mentors or a group of specific supporters who are there to help you through the journey. What type of people is it good to rope into this role?
The prime requirement for your supporters is that they actually want you to get a job. I coached a group of people who were self-sustaining in terms of support, but they all said to each other, I'm okay, Jack, as long as you haven't got a job. Oh, the Bob and Brian haven't got a job, that's okay. Whilst it sounds obvious, if your best mate always says to you, don't worry, I don't practice and I got a job, ignore them. You do not want them in your team, because what you want is someone who says, great, let's practice. Let me have a look at your CV. How are you doing? Have you met your targets yet? And whether that's a friend, a partner, a parent, an uncle, an old tutor, they need to have your best interests at heart and really be supporting you and gently nudging you forwards all the time, rather than simply buying you a beer and saying, oh, well, mate, better luck next month.
Again, you mentioned in the beginning of the book, the job hunting road is a difficult one. You're going to hit setbacks. You're going to there's going to be times when you're feeling down, you're feeling depressed.
Absolutely.
You need somebody people around you, a network who can lift you up and get you back on the road.
I think so. So you do want people to be nice to you, and clearly, if you have had an awful day, it's nice to have a hug or to go for a beer or just to sit and talk about it. But that's a sort of value-adding support. And I think what you find is you quite quickly can sort your friends into two groups. Those who actually will be constructive and those who simply will just, want to chat about nothing and not really add value to you. And I would always say, find the constructive people. They're not always the people who you think you are. And I know for myself that when I set up in business, I phoned an old lecturer and I went out and bought him a beer and basically asked him for all of his tips. And I phoned a managing director friend. And then I said to both of those people, who do you know who could help me? And both of them gave me a couple of names. I ended up with a group of 5 supporters who all did something different. One did sales, one did marketing, and so on. And yet they all wanted me to be successful and would email me and say, "How you getting on, Rich?" And did that work? And it was very nice to have that environment.
Another saying, they do say you are the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with. So you need to make sure those 5 people are positive and are going to keep you going and are not going to be bringing you down.
I agree. And if you're with people who aren't getting a job perhaps themselves and are saying, oh, this is all a bit too much like hard work and I can't be bothered, then you might need to think to yourself, perhaps I'll put those into my weekend friend group, but during the week when I'm job hunting, I'll have a different support group, because it will make a difference. It will power you forwards and energize you.